Hello and welcome to Crafts and Crimes or Crimes and Crafts. I don't know which way I put it, but today we're going to talk about Richard Ramirez while I paint a pretty substandard acrylic witch. I've been feeling the witchy vibe lately because I read somewhere on the internet that women and feminists, of which I am both. Kate joined me, and I know this is a creepy podcast talking about a serial killer, but how cute is she? She wanted to draw with me, so she obviously can't hear any of this because this was videoed days ago, and she wanted to draw with me. And the reason I do study serial killers is because I'm trying to protect her from them. Anyway, maybe that's a bit paranoid. So, I'm using this little tiny microphone that I got for Christmas, and it clips right on my shirt. Lavalier microphone. And I think it makes me very professional, and now my YouTube channel is going to probably break wide open. So we're going to talk about Richard Ramirez, and if you don't know who this is a serial killer from the 80s in California. California had some real fucked up serial killers. Anyway, I would have been around 7 or 8 and was thankfully shielded from this news because this would have been terrifying. So let's just, while I draw this little witch that I'm trying. Oh yes, I was telling you about why I was into the witchy vibe because I did read that the feminists, etc., were thinking that the witchy vibe, and not in a foo-foo weirdo way because I know crystals don't do anything except look pretty, but just in a and just getting in touch with that side of you is a great way to take down the patriarchy. Because obviously they were burning women for those behaviors. So let's explore those behaviors and see where they would have gone. So I'm just curious about it. So plus I like the aesthetic of a witch. I like the moon, the celestial, the black cat, Sabrina, all that shit. I'm in. Okay, let's go back to Richard Ramirez. So he was born in on leap year, February 29th, 1960. And he died, I think, 2013 in prison. And that's not a spoiler. Fuck him. He died in prison, I think, right in June 2013. And it's sad that I know that. Anyway, he was called the Night Stalker. So, 1984-ish, he started his crimes. And this guy looks he's got kind of long wannabe rock star hair. And he's got super rotted, gross teeth. And he's gross. So let's talk about, so he was a murderer, a rapist, a burglar. That's kind of a weird word. But anyway, he burgled. So let's talk about his crimes. Let's talk about his early life first, because, this is kind of fucked up too. So at 12 years old, Richard, or Richie as he was known, he was strongly influenced by his older cousin, Mike Ramirez. So Mike was a Green Beret in Vietnam, and he came home, and we all have a fucking weird cousin named Mike. Actually, I don't. I do have a cousin named Mike, but he's a physician, so he's pretty successful. But you can probably think of your weird fucking cousin Mike and think that this is not abnormal. His cousin Mike came home from Vietnam, and he showed him Polaroids of women he had raped and mutilated. And this cousin, so remember, he was 12 years old, Richard, and I'm not excusing his behavior, but I'm just saying that definitely shaped some of his darker side, because I'm sure he looked up to his cousin Mike, and his cousin Mike was showing him that he posed with severed heads of women. And so it was after this time, spending time with post-war cousin Mike, he was showing him all this brutal shit, that he started to smoke marijuana, which obviously we know there's nothing wrong with smoking marijuana, but for him it just kind of got worse and worse, and he got into heavy drugs eventually, which is probably why he had those gross rotten teeth. And they talk about his father being violent, but I haven't found, in my really detailed research that I did 20 minutes ago, I haven't found evidence of that. So cousin Mike, he was married to a woman named Jessie, and Richard, or Richie, was always hanging around with Mike and Jesse. You can imagine he probably idolized his cousin and became desensitized to some of that shit his cousin was showing him. And his wife, Jessie, said you need to stop hanging out with Richard, like you guys are not a good combination, etc. So he shot her in the face. So, and Richard actually witnessed that. So I think he might have been around 15. He was found not guilty, Mike, by reason of insanity, and he was released in 1977, so from a mental hospital. But his influence on Richard Ramirez obviously continued because Richard, immediately after spending that time with his cousin, started, I guess he started taking on some odd jobs, and he would rob sleeping patrons, among other things. They think he did. He attempted to rape the wife of a hotel guest, which I don't understand why it didn't end right there, but the husband beat Richard Ramirez senseless, and they dropped the charges, which that would not happen today. I like to think that would not happen today. But Jesus Christ, if he attempted to rape someone, whether the husband caught him or not, and beat him to shit or not, he needs to go to jail because he's obviously a threat. And he had witnessed a murder a couple of years prior to this. So he dropped out of school, shocker, and then he moved to California. So let's talk about his crimes. And this is a bad one. This is not, like, this is one of the assholes that make true crime not as fun as you think it's going to be, because that came out wrong. But like, studying true crime is an interest for a couple of reasons. You want to protect your family, and you're also fascinated by these warped brains, and mainly want to protect yourself from all the possible ways you could get hurt. But this guy, there's something about it that just, it's pretty dark. So on June 28th, 1984, 79-year-old Jenny Vincow was found murdered in her apartment, and she was stabbed repeatedly in her sleep, and her throat was slashed so deeply she was almost decapitated. His fingerprint was found on the screen when so this is what's creepy about this guy. He broke into people's houses. Prior to this, I do believe he had picked up younger children, boys and girls, at bus stops and things like that, and molested them, and then dropped them off in an empty field somewhere. So he was, I mean, they're putting all this together after the fact, but he had already, he didn't just go from, burglarizing a house to straight murder. There were steps. In March 17th, 1985, he attacked 22-year-old Maria Hernandez outside her home. He shot her in the face after she pulled into her garage. Now, she did survive because she had held up her hands, and I'm getting a lot of this from Wikipedia/Murderpedia, so donate to them if you have any extra cash. She held up her hands with her keys, and the bullet ricocheted off her keys, so very lucky woman. And her roommate, Dale, 34, a woman as well, she raised her head. He shot her once in the forehead, killing her. So within an hour of that, he pulled 30-year-old Veronica Yu out of her car in Monterey Park, California, and shot her twice and fled. I don't know why he was on a murder spree. I mean, who knows why? But after those murders, he was dubbed the walk-in killer and the valley intruder. So he was breaking into people's homes, attacking them, and murdering them. So you can imagine these neighborhoods would have been terrified at this point. On March 27th, 1985, so that is 10 days later, he entered a home that he had previously burglarized in Whittier, California, and he killed the sleeping Vincent Charles Zazzara, who was 64, with a gunshot. And his wife, who was 44, was awakened by the gunshot, and he beat her and bound her, demanded to know where the valuables were. She escaped her bindings, and she got the shotgun, but it wasn't loaded, and she tried to threaten him, but he was so furious that he shot her 3 times with his .22, and then he mutilated her body. So I don't even want to say this next part, especially because it's so gross, but he carved a T in her breasts, and he removed her eyeballs. But they were post-mortem. Not that that makes it better, but I mean, it makes it better for, her situation in one sense, but like, he's a sick idiot. Okay, so obviously he is, what do you call it? He's advancing. He's like growing and becoming worse. So, this particular murder, this really gruesome one, is where they found a left footprint in the dirt outside of in the flower bed outside of the window he broke into of an Avia sneaker, Avia. So he was wearing this Avia sneaker. The killer. They didn't know it was Richard Ramirez. They didn't know who it was. They didn't even probably have all these murders tied together yet because they were in different little cities around California. But they did find this shoe print. And this is in the 80s. So they photographed it, they cast it, and this was the only evidence they had against this particular killer who, like I say, they didn't know if it was one, two, many, whatever. So on March 14th, 1985, he returned to Monterey Park and entered the home of Bill Doy, 66, and his disabled wife Lillian, 56, surprised them, shot him in the face, and when he went for his own handgun, he mortally beat the man who had already had a gunshot to his face, entered the bedroom where the wife was. He bound her with thumb cuffs. I don't know what that is. I don't want to know what that is. That sounds so creepy. He raped her and he ransacked the home, and the husband did die on his way to the hospital. I don't know. Oh, there's Sweet Kate again. I hate that I'm talking about gross shit when she popped in my video, but I was making this video not knowing what kind of voiceover I was going to do, and I was having so much fun. She was drawing a YouTube tutorial on drawing puppies, and I was drawing this witch, and this witch was not working out for me. I mean, I was just laying down color for the first 20 minutes. I just wanted to get colors in where I wanted them, and then I wanted to kind of put a little bit of like bluish green on the outsides of the face to kind of give it like more depth and dimension, but I think I severely fucked that up coming up. All right, going on. This is dark. I'm just going to have a little sip of wine. Sometimes I have to have a sip of wine to get through this. All right. Oh, that was Kate giving you a peace sign. Yeah, so I think at this point I'm staring at this little acrylic witch thinking, these colors, like I did gesso the canvas so that it would take color better. I don't know if my watercolors are watery or old, or sorry, my acrylics are watery or old, but I just found they were not taking to the canvas, like they weren't thick enough, and I just wanted this little witch to be just sitting crisscross applesauce. There's another peace sign for you. And I just wanted her to have big eyes and the big moon behind her and her little broom, and it just wasn't happening for me. I just kept adding lighter colors, hoping to give some depth to the background, but it just all looks so flat. And part of me thinks the reason it looks so flat is because I do so much digital art now. I use Procreate and my Apple Pencil, and I'm really losing whatever touch I had before. So I do really need to get up in this art room, or bonus room as we call it, and do, traditional art with the kids, because when you don't use it, you lose it. Is that what they say? Jesus, Bill Bailey. My cat just scared the fuck out of me. Scary up here. And at this point, I'm deciding I'm going to change her outfit from purple to green because I can't get it to look 3D. Not 3D, what's the word? I don't know. It's just so friggin' flat. Anyway, here I go. Let's go back. So I don't think it says this in my research. And by research, I mean I printed a couple articles from the internet. But there was a famous California newscaster, and I can't think of her name. So she would have been like the Diane Sawyer of the 1980s. I don't know. And she did a story on this, serial killer, because they were starting to piece together some of these crimes as being one person. So, of course, they do a story on the serial killer, and she, I think mistakenly, announces that they have this shoe print of this Avia shoe. And so immediately, Richard Ramirez takes his Avia sneakers and throws them over a bridge. Now, I don't think she meant to do that, but now we're not going to catch Richard Ramirez. And I always say we, like I am part of law enforcement, but maybe that's just my dream. So on May 29th, 1985, so this is all happening in like a 2-year period, he drove a stolen Mercedes-Benz to Monrovia, California, and stopped at the house of Mabel. And her nickname was Ma Bell. She was 83, and her sister Florence, Nettie Lang, who was 81. And he found a hammer in the kitchen, and he bludgeoned and bound Lang, which is Nettie Lang. And then he did the same to Belle, Ma Bell, and he raped her. He raped Nettie. So, gross. He's such a monster. After he raped her, he used her lipstick to draw a pentagram on her thigh and on the walls in the bedroom. So, and interesting, like the women were discovered alive, both of them, like 2 days later, but Ma Bell did die of her injuries later on. But that pentagram put a lot of California into, so the 80s was the time of the satanic panic, and people thought Satanists were like a real threat, and you know, Satan worshippers and pentagrams were a lot scarier than, they are today. So that got people worked up. So the very next day after he did these unbelievable crimes to those poor ladies, he drove his car to Burbank, California. He snuck into the home of Carol Kyle, who was 42. And this is what gets me, that he's going into people's homes. I don't know. I don't remember the 80s enough to know if people locked their doors and had dogs, and or if they just, like, I know if we weren't expecting someone and someone knocked at the door, all of us would just be like, what the hell, like, who's here, and be very suspicious, because usually you don't open the door unless you're expecting someone. But maybe in the 80s it was different. Maybe you opened your door, maybe you left your door. I don't know. I don't know what it was like in these particular towns. So he had this poor woman at gunpoint, and she had an 11-year-old son. He handcuffed the son, ransacked the house. He released the son to find the valuables, and he sodomized the woman. He had actually molested multiple aged victims, multiple race victims, and both or all the genders. So he didn't. It would have been really hard to get a profile on him because he didn't differentiate in terms of his victims. Um, he ordered her not to look at him, and he threatened to cut her eyes out. But he actually did bind them together and leave them, so they did survive their attack. On the night of July 2nd, 1985, I don't know why this is important, he drove a stolen Toyota to Arcadia, California, and randomly selected the house of Mary Louise Cannon, 75, and he quietly entered the widowed grandmother's home, and he found her asleep, and he bludgeoned her unconscious and stabbed her. You can't even. This is why the Night Stalker is so terrifying, because he didn't have an MO. He didn't have it wasn't like, okay, he was going after blonde women in their 20s. It didn't matter. He was equal opportunity murdering whoever he could break into their house, and that's what's one of the most terrifying things of studying true crime, but also a great wake-up call for when we know we have to protect ourselves. And you can look at the statistics all you want, and yeah, I live in a town where this probably has never happened and may never happen, but I'm still going to be very careful, because these really dark people exist, and you don't want to become one of their victims. And sad to say, none of these victims that I'm reading about right now, suspected that was going to be their last day. Like, how dark is that to think about? So July 5th. I will tell you before I go on, the ending to this is uplifting in a sense, a strange sense, so you're going to like the ending. So stick around, even if you hate the sound of my voice like I do, stick around, because this is a very cool ending. One of the most cool true crime endings that there is out there. So July 5th, 1985, he broke into the home of 16-year-old Whitney Bennett and bludgeoned her with a tire iron. He looked for a knife to finish the job, and he attempted to strangle her with a telephone cord. And when sparks emanate from the cord and the victim began to breathe, he fled the house. And this is what he believed, because he's so fucked up, is that Jesus Christ had intervened and saved her. So she did survive, but she had to have 478 stitches, and I get this from Wikipedia, to close the lacerations to her scalp. Like, how broken does someone have to be to just want to hurt anyone they can come in contact with? On July 7th, 1985, he burglarized the home of Joyce Lucille Nelson, 61, in Monterey Park, and he found her asleep on her couch, and he beat her to death with his fists and kicking her in the head. So, this is before he had thrown out, before that anchor woman had announced that they were looking for someone with the Avia sneaker, and his sneaker left a print in her face. And that is gross to hear. I'm really sorry I have to tell you that, but it's one of the ways he was caught. After cruising 2 other neighborhoods, he returned to Monterey Park and he chose another home, Sophie Dickman, 63, and he assaulted and handcuffed her at gunpoint, attempted to rape her. And when she swore to him he had taken everything of value, he told her to swear on Satan. So that information, obviously, the satanic panic of that time would have had people, you should be riled up. There's no doubt you should be riled up, but it's not because Satan's telling him what to do. On July 20th, 1985, he purchased a machete and he drove, again, a stolen Toyota. I don't know how he's stealing all these cars, to Glendale, California, and he chose the home of Leela Niding, 66, and her husband Maxon, 68, and he burst into their sleeping bedroom, killed them with a machete and also a handgun. He did further mutilate their bodies, and he stole all the valuables from the house as well. This guy, it's scary that this is like over the course of, I think, less than 2 years that he committed so much murder in the California area. And, it was just, he was hard to catch because he did not have any kind of signature way about how he did things. Taking a break because it's hard to read, and I'll talk about now. I'm my witch. I'm breaking out my, I think they're Tim Holtz. They're either Tim Holtz distress crayons or maybe Jane Davenport markers. I'm not sure because I gave up on the acrylics, and this is a mixed media channel and art journal channel, and I decided to try something else. So I think I get out some charcoal, maybe some Caron Dash. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but they're kind of crayons that can be activated by water. Oh, there's a mermaid marker because I didn't like that green. Was looking really flat. Everything is flat about this painting. I like her because I have this video going at 8 times the speed. So this is like a 27-minute video, and I'm not going to do the math. But I did spend a number of hours working on her. So I like her for that. Like, I wasn't going to give up on her. But I just couldn't get her to the point where I felt like she was like popping off the page. And I think I have a lot of skills I still need to learn, but that's a big one. Like, I really struggle to make them look like, I don't know, have depth. So I obviously don't like that moon because whenever I don't like something, I'm like, I'll throw white at it. That'll fix it. But it does look better with white. All right, let's keep going. We're almost to the end and we're almost to the good part, so don't worry. Okay, at 4:15, same day, July 20th, 1985, he broke into the home of the Klavanath family and he shot the sleeping Chainarong Klavanath in the head, killed him instantly, and then he raped his wife and sodomized her. He bound their 8-year-old son, stole all the valuable items, and demanded that she swear to Satan, the woman, that she was not hiding any money from him. August 6, 1985, he drove to Northridge, California, and broke into the home of Chris and Virginia Peterson. He crept into their bedroom. She was 27. He shot her in the face with a .25 caliber semi-automatic handgun. He shot Chris in the temple. Chris fought back. How the fuck do you fight after getting shot in the temple? Do you fight back? Like, that's some badass, like, survival skills. He avoided being hit by two more shots, and they both survived their injuries. Like, she was shot in the face, he was shot in the temple, and they both survived. God, crazy. On August 8th, 1985, he drove a car, another stolen car. How did you steal cars in the 80s? It must have been easy. Diamond Bar, California, chose the home of Sakina Abawath, 27, and her husband, Elias Abawath. And he entered their home, and he shot and killed sleeping Elias in the head, and he handcuffed Sakina. And of course, he was looking for Jules, and again with the Satan bullshit. So he was following the media coverage of his crimes. He left Los Angeles, and he went to visit his brother. Just when they started to put out, they figured out they knew who this might be. His name, however, they figured out his name and his face went in the newspaper. And he didn't realize that, and apparently he was heading back from San Francisco. And after the press conference, Dianne Feinstein, that was the name of she was the mayor. She wasn't even the person. Anyway, the mayor was the one that leaked about the issue. So, the cool part, I'm going to finish up because we're down to a little bit left. So, when he comes back from visiting his brother, he goes into a liquor store. I think it's a liquor store. And his face is on the fucking newspaper that's sitting there in the liquor store. And a woman looks and recognizes him and says, I can't remember the term because I'm an asshole, but it was something about, in Spanish, it meant the bully. And she started chasing him. This was Boyle Heights, California. So then she chased him. The other patrons of the liquor store chased him. Neighbors in the area came out and she was screaming, this is the Night Stalker, the Night Stalker. He tried to take somebody's car. He beat a woman, pulled her out of the car. The husband came out and attacked him for beating his wife. And then Richard Ramirez ran off and the husband sent his 2 big sons to chase him. Those sons chased him down the fucking street. The neighbors came out. They all chased him. They were chasing the Night Stalker because they recognized him from his picture in the newspaper, and they beat the fuck out of him. If I've heard there were hundreds of people out on the street at that time catching him, but Boyle Heights in California, they didn't fuck around, and they caught him. And in the end, he asked to be arrested because they beat him so badly. And just to satisfy you even more, he died in prison because he was such an unhealthy motherfucking asshole. Gonna end it there because I ran out of time. Wish I could talk to you more. Bye.